It's official. March 29th is to be permanently recognized as National Vietnam War Veterans Day. There was bipartisan legislation designating March 29th as National Vietnam Veterans Day. It's been signed into law by President Trump. In many cases, Vietnam veterans did not receive the warm welcome they earned when they came home. Thankfully, in the years following the Vietnam War, people and organizations across the country took it upon themselves to right this wrong by honoring the sacrifice and dedication of our Vietnam veterans. You have a flyer on your desk from an individual that we all know, one of our former members. And I'm not going to read everything on that particular flyer, but with the permission of the body and you, Mr. President, just a couple words.
Go ahead.
So the Vietnam War started in 1955 and ended in 1975. It was America's longest war. 58,220 U.S. servicemen died in that conflict. 1,626 are still missing. One of our members, former members, Senator Huggins, who's no longer with us and retired, was in the thick of things. And the reason I cite this is veterans, generally speaking, and especially Vietnam veterans, they didn't often talk about the conflict. They didn't often talk about what they saw, what they experienced. And unlike other wars, such as World War II, when many of these folks came home, they didn't come home to ticker tape parades. They oftentimes came home unescorted, having to take a taxi or even walking or getting a ride from a friend. It was somewhat unceremonious when they returned from this conflict. And as we know, the 60s, there was much upheaval in the 60s in terms of different types of social situations being reordered. There were protests, and unfortunately for these folks, our Vietnam veterans, they oftentimes were caught in the thick of it. These were oftentimes 18, 19, 20-year-old young men and women that went overseas to serve our country. And when they returned home, as I mentioned, it wasn't often to a warm welcome. This day goes a long way in remembering what these folks did for our country. Alaska is blessed to have the highest population of veterans in the country for a state. And many of us know Senator Huggins. We know many veterans, many Vietnam veterans. And I just want to read one small part of one of the medals that was awarded to Senator Huggins. And as most veterans do, he really never talked about this. And I think if he's listening today, he's going to be somewhat, probably slightly embarrassed, because these individuals, this was the ultimate example of walking the walk, not talking. So just briefly, this is for a Bronze Star, and there's several in this packet, but this is for a Bronze Star. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Executive Order 11046, August 24th, 1962, takes pleasure in presenting a second bronze oak leaf cluster in lieu of a third award of the Bronze Star Medal to Captain Infantry Charles Roy Huggins, United States Army, for meritorious achievement in connections with military operations against a hostile force during the period 16 April 1972, 16 June 1972, while serving as a senior advisor in the 81st Airborne Ranger Group, Army of the Republic of Vietnam. During this period, Captain Huggins was instrumental to the decided success of the 81st Group as it fought a continuous series of vicious engagements within the city of On Loc. His adjustments to the United States fire support assets within the city was often the determining factor in the outcome of the close infighting that characterized his unit's operations. Because the 81st Group was always outnumbered by the enemy, the support provided by Captain Huggins was the only factor that prevented the decimation of this unit. I just bring this to light because this is an example of thousands of Americans that fought in that conflict, that don't really talk about that conflict. But today we have an opportunity to thank all of them and to remember them on this day every year going forward. So with that, Mr. President, I thank you for the opportunity to speak on this topic.